Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. These folks do it all. Fire safety systems that have to be tested. Not only can they install them, but they do the maintenance on them, and they come in and do the yearly testing. Life safety systems, like alarm systems, patient call systems, nurse call systems. They've got all the office security, home security. Safety Systems, just a tremendous company. Give them a call. VFL JJ Surlis is the man to reach out and phone. SafetySystems.com to learn more about all the many options or many things that they do for you, your home, and your business. Safety Systems. Okay. Tennessee coaches are making a point of getting their linemen reps at different positions right now. Their offensive linemen, from what we're hearing. We're going by what we're told. The interesting thing, though, is so much of the hype built around this team was Wanya Morris, Darnell Wright. Okay, you had these guys last year who are going to be great. Well, Darnell Wright was in and out of the lineup some last year. He didn't start to finish. This spring, they're now talking about, okay, well, you've got Jameer Johnson's giving Wanya Morris an actual run for his money at left tackle. Darnell Wright, K'Ron Colbert, they're kind of flipping spots, right tackle, right guard. And then you got Cade Mays just hanging out there. If he comes back, what does that do? My question is, and I'm not trying to belittle those two guys, is this a good thing or a bad thing that they haven't locked down those tackle slots? Again, the idea was we've got these two first-round talents, these pillars of the line. Is it good that, whoa, we got so much competition, it's not set in stone that they're going to bid? Or is it bad that, our two pillars haven't set it in stone yet? These pillars are supposed to be stone. Thoughts on the offensive line and the tackle position?
I think like any of these situations, it's a little bit of both. But I think in Morris's case, I think it's more about Jameer Johnson having that good of an offseason and pushing him after not being as much of a factor last year. Darnell Wright is the one to me that by year two, you kind of hoped he had knocked off some of the rust, gotten in better conditioning, things like that. But not having a normal offseason, I think, was a setback to a guy like him. So I think it's more, it's a little bit of both with Darnell Wright, and that's concerning in year two. So I think, yeah, a little bit of bad news in the sense that these guys, you thought at least by their sophomore year would be locked in starters, but at the same time, it's a sign of Tennessee's strength on the offensive line.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. The best case would be the conversation we're having right now is that both of these two young, talented players, that they have just solidified themselves and all of this potential that we've heard so much about is locked in, good to go, and then you talk about the guys that have experience maybe behind them that provide the depth. It still is good, though, that I think there's competition. Also, I think it's good that before the season there's a reminder of it's still a question mark. Besides quarterback, which I think just has to be the biggest question, how this offensive line plays, especially as we wait on Cade Mays news, I think is the biggest question for this football team because of the impact it will have on the season.
There's this thing called coach speak, and you always have to wonder about what that really means. But if at first blush, I would want Morris and Wright to be my starting tackles. And I would feel, if I felt comfortable in that, that means that they're really solid players. But if they're getting pushed not because of their inefficiency, because Jameer Johnson's looking a lot better, because some other offensive lineman's looking a lot better, that's a positive thing. So it's kind of hard to exactly figure out where that stands right now. I do like the idea, though, that Tennessee has 8 offensive linemen that have starting experience, and that doesn't count Cade Mays. So I think there's some experience up there. But again, going back to my first reaction was I would want those tackles to be locked in. Trey Smith's locked in. Your center Kennedy's locked in. Right guard position might be in flux a little bit. I would want that unless it's because Jameer Johnson's pushing somebody and he's playing that well or some other lineman's playing that well.
Well, and again, that's the kind of, you mentioned coach speak. That's kind of what we're dealing with when everything's closed down. Just tell them to go by what they tell you.
Yeah.
We got into a discussion last week about selling a bill of goods. So how big is the competition? But let me ask you this. Anything else on offense? We're going to get to defense in a second. Anything else you're hearing coming out of there that stands out to you, positive or negative, on the offensive side of the football?
I think the recent news on Austin Pope at tight end is huge for this team. I mean, I don't know how much that's been discussed, but that was one of the bigger stories, and I think we'll see still. I think it's still not a guarantee he's in there for the start of the season, but I think just the chance that he's back out there is a big difference for this team. Tight end was looking like a huge concern, especially when you're wanting to run the ball as much as Tennessee might this year. You've got to have a pretty good blocking tight end. You don't have to be relying on 6 offensive linemen to get that done.
John, I think that the highly touted wide receiver group appears to be living up to its hype. I guess it was Chaney who said the other day that they're really fast and they run good routes, and they got good hands, but sometimes they run these routes really fast, and they're running the wrong routes. So you got to get that fixed. But I do think there's a lot of athletic ability and a lot of talent among that group. So I think so far they seem to have lived up to their hype.
I forget which coach it was. It was an NFL coach who talked about the fact that he would rather have a guy that runs a 4.7 in the right direction than a guy that runs a 4.4 in the wrong direction. Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I would just back up what Jimmy said. That a lot of positive reviews on the talent of the wide receivers. So how they were viewed through the recruiting process is being backed up. But is that more of a long-term or a short-term conversation? Don't know. We're guessing. But we know this. At wide receiver, there's a need because of the guys that left, because D'Angelo Gibbs isn't playing. So there will be an opportunity for those young guys quickly.
And Jalen Hyatt in particular, the name we keep hearing a lot.
We mentioned that last week. His name continued to pop this week as well.
Yep.
We talked about Garantano. There were some people who had hoped that there would be more of a quarterback competition this fall. And I think with the COVID thing, and certainly with Harrison Bailey, as a true freshman coming in and then having to be out for 3 or 4 days with the quarantine, he's mixed in with Shrout and Maurer in terms of that second string. But it sounds like, for those of you who are hoping for some sort of upset at the starting quarterback position, this isn't the year to expect that. So,
yeah, and the number 2 battle I think will continue on.
Yeah.
I think Shrout or Maurer could be the guy behind Jarrett Garantano if a number 2 quarterback is needed.
Shrout is a guy who I wonder if they had had a spring practice, would he have stayed around afterwards? But it sounds like he has made enough leaps in the offseason that he has now put himself more into consideration as the number 2. So he's moving in the right direction. We'll see what that means for Maurer, who kind of wound up as your number 2 last year. And then you throw Bailey into the mix as well. All right, when we come back, Derek Ansley had good things to say about his defensive backs. I want to know specifically about your starting corners. Are they ready to live up to their potential? We know the talent's there. Do they put it all together this year? Come on back, we'll discuss that